In September 2023, Ukrainian submarine drones were heading to destroy the Russian fleet at Sebastopol. Halfway there, they lost the signal. It wasn't a Russian attack. It wasn't a technical failure. It was a decision made by a private businessman in California. Elon Musk decided not to activate Starlink coverage over Crimea. The drones ran aground. The fleet survived, and the world didn't find out until weeks later when it surfaced in Musk's unauthorized biography. This is the story of how the global internet backbone is falling under the control of private corporations with no democratic accountability, and what that means for the rest of the planet. To understand why this matters, you have to understand what Starlink actually is. It's not just another internet service. It's the first mass-scale low Earth orbit satellite constellation in history. More than 10,000 satellites orbiting at 550 kilometers altitude, covering virtually the entire planet. Latency as low as 25 milliseconds, comparable to terrestrial broadband. 7.6 million subscribers in over 110 countries. And, unlike traditional geostationary satellites orbiting at 36,000 kilometers with latencies of 600 milliseconds, Starlink's LEO satellites are nearly instantaneous. That speed makes them useful for military applications that were previously impossible in areas without ground infrastructure. But there's something more urgent than the technology: the race for orbital slots. Space seems infinite, but useful orbits are not. The International Telecommunication Union, the UN body that regulates the radio spectrum, manages an orbital slot registration system based on a simple principle: first come, first served. If you register a satellite network before anyone else, no one can interfere with your signal at that orbit and frequency. And here's where the game starts. Companies and countries have learned to register constellations of thousands of satellites they never intend to launch, simply to block orbital space from competitors. The ITU calls them paper satellites. The United States is the largest documented offender in the call band. SpaceX was smarter. Instead of registering and not launching, it launched so fast it physically occupied the space before anyone else could claim it. The Starlink constellation isn't just a business. It's a territorial occupation in orbit. Now, come the numbers that change the narrative. SpaceX signed a $1.8 billion contract in 2021 with the National Reconnaissance Office, the U.S. spy satellite agency, for the Starshield program, the military version of Starlink. In December 2024, the Pentagon paid an additional $537 million just for Starlink services in Ukraine. In 2024, SpaceX's unclassified government contracts totaled $3.3 billion, and that's just the visible part. Starlink's projected revenue for 2025 is $11.8 billion, driven largely by military contracts. What is publicly presented as an internet service is, in financial terms, a dual-use military infrastructure that the U.S. government actively subsidizes. The question no one asks openly is this: can any army in the world trust telecommunications infrastructure controlled by a businessman whose decisions are subject to no democratic oversight? And then there's Taiwan, the island that manufactures 90% of the world's advanced chips, and that is the most geopolitically watched target on the planet, has no commercial access to Starlink. Negotiations collapsed in May 2026. SpaceX argued that Taiwan has over 99% terrestrial mobile coverage and is not a priority market. But in the context of a potential Chinese military conflict, terrestrial internet would be the first to go. Without Starlink, Taiwan would be cut off from the world. Some defense policy analysts suggest the absence of Starlink in Taiwan is not accidental, that it reflects an implicit SpaceX decision not to complicate its relations with China, where it does operate in lower tension zones. Others attribute it simply to commercial calculations. What is certain is that the private company that could connect the world's most strategically important island decided not to. But there is a risk no corporation wants to discuss publicly: the Kessler Syndrome. The scenario was first described by NASA physicist Donald Kessler in 1978. If the density of objects in orbit exceeds a critical threshold, collisions generate fragments that cause more collisions in an exponential cascade that could render an entire orbital layer unusable for centuries. This is not science fiction. Current NASA models show that some orbital corridors are already above the critical density threshold. There are 600,000 fragments between 1 and 10 centimeters in orbit that we cannot track, and 23,000 objects larger than 10 centimeters. Starlink operates at 550 kilometers, where atmospheric drag deorbit satellites within years. But if something went wrong at scale, if a chain collision contaminated that orbital layer, we wouldn't just lose Starlink, we would lose all satellite infrastructure at that altitude. GPS, military communications, Earth observation. And the irony is that the only company that has populated that corridor with enough density for the risk to be statistically significant is the same one that depends on it to exist. While SpaceX builds its orbital monopoly, Amazon is not watching from the sidelines. Project Kuiper, now renamed Amazon Leo, plans to launch 3,236 satellites. As of June 2026, more than 330 are in orbit. U.S. federal regulation requires 50% of the constellation to be in orbit before July 2026, or Amazon loses its license. The race is frantic. But Kuiper is not just a commercial competitor to Starlink. Some intelligence analysts point out that Amazon Web Services, the world's largest cloud computing provider, with contracts with the CIA and Department of Defense, could use Kuiper as data infrastructure in conflict zones without depending on the terrestrial network. 2 private constellations, $2 trillion of combined market cap, and both with classified contracts with the U.S. government. The question is no longer whether the internet of the future will be private. The question is whose. In less than a decade, the global internet backbone went from being public infrastructure regulated by states to being private property of 2 American corporations. One decision in Crimea proved that private control of connectivity has real military consequences. The absence of Starlink in Taiwan proved that control has geopolitical consequences, and the Kessler Syndrome proves that the consequences of a catastrophic failure would not be paid by the corporations, but by all of civilization. What we are building in orbit is not just internet. It is the next layer of sovereignty. And the question that governments around the world have been unable to answer is simple. Whoever controls the infrastructure controls the future. If the answer is a private company with no elections, no parliament, and no borders, then the concept of national sovereignty in the 21st century needs urgent redefinition.